Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee, home to 24/7 excitement, dining, and an on-site hotel at 1721 West Canal Street. More information at potawatomi.com.
Lake Effect brings you conversations about what's happening in Milwaukee and the people, places, and organizations that shape the community. This is Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
Starting this week, some bus riders across Milwaukee County will need to wait longer for their rides, especially on the weekends. That's because the Milwaukee County Transit System reduced service to some routes to help deal with a multi-million-dollar budget deficit. Regular fares also went up by 75 cents at the beginning of this year. To learn more about the changes, WUWM education reporter Katherine Kokal is joined by Jesus Ochoa and Brian DeNeeve with MCTS.
Let's start with what people need to know about these changes. First off, fares increased at the beginning of the year from $2 to $2.75 per trip. The reduced fare is up to $1.25. There are also some changes to routes that started earlier this week. They're called targeted changes to route frequency. Can you briefly walk through what types of changes riders will see, Jesus?
Yeah, so riders should expect to see some frequency reductions across 16 routes in this winter service change period. Buses may come a little bit less frequently than they have previously. Some riders may wait 5 to 10 minutes longer than they used to wait if they're on a particular route. So there's 16 of those across weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. The other big change is that for 6 routes, the Route 20, Route 28, 33, 34, 55, and 58, those routes will only operate in the morning time periods and the afternoons, roughly around 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. So riders should really expect to pre-plan and know that service between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. will no longer be there.
Kind of the morning rush hour and the afternoon rush hour, right?
Correct.
Okay. And this is the first phase of changes to routes. We're going to see more in March, correct?
That is correct. So starting on March 8th, we are going to make some modifications to 5 other routes. So parts of those routes that tend to have lower ridership will no longer have bus service. So riders on those routes should really, take a look at our schedules and prepare for those changes coming up in March. We really wanted to give a little bit more time for our riders to learn their new trip patterns. So that was the big reason for starting those a little bit later versus starting them in January.
And so fares went up at the beginning of this year. Do we anticipate them going up again this year? Brian, I'll let you answer that.
The fare increase that took place beginning January 1, 2026 was actually part of the budget cycle process for the annual Milwaukee County budget. So was first discussed and deliberated upon last spring and summer. So I don't anticipate any increases in fares going up in 2026. There may be discussions of the following year that taking place, but as of now, I don't anticipate that happening.
Brian, we're going to stick with you, I assume. MCTS has a $14 million gap in its budget because it doesn't have a dedicated source of funding, right? How will these changes help address that budget deficit?
Sure. So the $14 million budget deficit was for the 2026, all of 2026 that was anticipated for the year. And so there were a few different ways that we were able to take steps to close that budget gap. One was $9 million that was part of the county executive's budget that uses ARPA funds. So that's COVID relief funds that were still remaining. And then there was nearly $5 million, roughly $4 million that came from the county board as part of a budget amendment that they were able to add in to what was the final adopted budget. And so since then, we've just been looking to do the targeted route changes that would affect kind of those lower ridership points on specific routes, because ultimately every time you put someone in a bus or a bus operator run that bus on a specific route, that's obviously a cost. And so we looked at these very strategic changes on the routes where they had the lowest ridership in order to make sure that we were really operating within our means.
I'm going to take a moment here just to reintroduce you both. Today we're speaking with Jesus Ochoa, the Director of Service Development at Milwaukee County Transit System. We're also hearing from Brian DeNeeve, the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Transit System. Jesus, I'm going to go to you. I'm the education reporter, so I'm always thinking about how changes will impact students. We know a lot of students in Milwaukee public schools take the bus to school, as well as obviously UWM and Marquette students. Most of the major route changes are happening on the weekends. At least most of the major wait time increases will be happening on the weekends. But if I'm a student taking the bus to my campus, what should I know?
Thank you, Katie. That's a great question. We do serve our high schools, universities really well with transit. Transit's vital. We heard a lot from our MPS students during the budget process of how important and vital this service is, which really led to a lot of the recommendations in our plan. So I would let students know that whether you use one route, whether you use two routes or three maybe to get to school, definitely take a look at our schedules. We have previews on our website to really know what your new trip pattern is. Really utilize our real-time tracking, our trip planning functions through our UMO app to really gauge what alternatives could be out there for certain times of day. There are a lot of changes that are happening on the weekends, but there are some substantial changes happening during the weekday that will impact students. So definitely take advantage of the resources we have online and keep up with what we're doing this year.
If I could add, we do look at the bus as being, a major opportunity for mobility and for people to get around. But there are other opportunities, especially for college students that are comfortable or able to utilize, whether that's just walking an extra block or two. Obviously, we have a very robust bike share system through the Bubbler network in the city of Milwaukee and beyond. And then, of course, the DACA scooter program, which is very popular here. So, there's probably opportunities for exploration of other modes of transportation, especially for those younger riders or students that are able to use those.
Jesus, you're kind of the route specialist, right? Are there any schools that are going to lose service in this phase of the changes?
No, that's a great question. So part of this entire budget process and the strategic analysis that we did was to try to preserve as much service as possible. So originally we were slated to eliminate 6 routes. There's going to be no lines that are going to be eliminated as of January. There are going to be some segments of routes that will be trimmed back. However, the segments that are going to remain will continue to serve schools, right? So we're talking about the peripheries of the system, areas where there's a handful of riders during certain times of day. So we're really strategic in trying to keep the buses along the segments of these routes that carry the most people, right?
Excellent. So public transit experts would say that increasing frequency and adding more routes is usually the way to get more people to ride and thus make more money. But that's not really possible, right? With a budget deficit. So what is MCTS's philosophy when it comes to serving the community while also staying afloat? Brian, I think that would be a good question for you.
Certainly. So MCTS's philosophy really is we can be a resource and an option. You look at two different types of riders generally. Those who do it by choice. Maybe they own a car or they have other ways of getting around. They can afford possibly an on-demand Lyft service. And then you have those riders that really solely rely on the bus for getting around. And so there's still an opportunity very much for Milwaukee County Transit System to appeal more to those choice riders. I mean, we are maintaining routes throughout 2026, and there's opportunities for people to look at the bus as a possibility to, go somewhere to an entertainment destination or an event, or to go shopping on, especially on some shorter trips where there are commercial corridors and a lot of great places to visit throughout the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County. So we do feel that regardless of these changes in service, I'll be doing my best, and then the organization will be doing its best to continue to encourage people to take a second look at the bus if they haven't ridden in a while, or try it as a new thing, and perhaps you'll have a positive experience moving forward and will return with us.
And if I may add, Katie, high frequency is king in transit. It's across the nation, across the world. And that's no different here in Milwaukee. Our high frequency routes that come every 15 minutes or better, they carry the most riders. 73% of all of our rides are on those high frequency routes. So it really shows that if you can make transit convenient, people will use it. And that's something that we really took into consideration as part of this plan. A deficit's going to impact riders regardless, right? So how can we preserve as much of the high frequency service as possible to keep us sustainable?
Yeah, thank you. I will also point out that both MCTS and now WUWM's website have a guide that can tell you exactly how many minutes a rider can expect to wait longer as a result of these service changes. So all of that information is both on the MCTS website as well as our story at WUWM.com. So if you're interested in route by route information, it is available online. Thanks so much for speaking with me about this today. I think these are really important changes that riders should be looking for.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Jesus Ochoa is the system's Director of Service Development, and Brian DeNeeve is the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Milwaukee County Transit System. They both joined education reporter Katherine Kokal. Milwaukee County Transit is a financial supporter of WUWM.
You can find more interviews like this one by visiting wuwm.com/lakeeffect. And while you're there, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast.